Welcome back to my Disney mini album tutorial. In this video, we're going to work on the page that flips upwards, starting with the front, and then we'll go on to the inside. Now, I have this pocket here. I believe this is the Simple Stories library pocket. It's not with the collection that I'm using, the Photoplay collection, but it'll match, and I like that it matches this here, so I'm going to bring this into here. So I'm going to try to coordinate all of this stuff so that it all works together. Now, for my main papers here, I'm going to be using this paper, and it's a pretty busy paper. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my library pocket here that I'm going to put a photo mat, and I'm going to make it a tuck spot that's going to have a photo mat as well that tucks into there. So it will break some of this paper up and not seem quite as busy. Then I'm also going to use this paper. So I have the contrast here, so the dark versus a little bit lighter here, but I like that this brown comes in with the camera, the brown's here, and I'll end up adding some of the brown papers here to this booklet so that it contrasts across all three pages. And this paper I'm actually going to be adding down here as the pocket, so it's going to be behind it with this paper on the front, and then I'm going to add a lighter paper here on the back side to give it that contrast. So let's get started. Now I've gone ahead and added this paper. I've cut it to 6 3/4 by 8 inches, and I have adhered this down. On my original album, I had a little notch here, and I only adhered the sides and the bottom of my paper to create a tuck spot for a little photo mat or photo booklet to stick in, but I decided not to do that for this one because I'm going to have the photo mat pull out the side here of the library pocket. So I'm going to take my library pocket here and apply my adhesive down the right side and this bottom edge. And you can make your own library pocket out of the paper that you're using. You would just cut a piece here, and then you would cut a piece for the front and add little tabs on it to create that pocket. Once I have my adhesive on, I'm just going to set this down here towards that bottom right corner, and then I'm going to make sure that it's adhered down to my paper. And we'll come back in later and we will add our photo mats to that later, and I might stick a journaling card down in here too. And then I'm going to have ties. The ribbon is going to be underneath here, and it's going to tie closed on the page, so the ribbon, when it's tied in a bow, will actually sit on this pocket too. Now I'm going to open this up and focus on the piece for the top of the page base, and I'm going to use this paper here because it is a little bit more of a just plain background paper. And I've cut this piece to 10 3/4 by 3 inches. I will be putting this here on this top section, leaving a border on the sides and the top, and then I'm going to come and add my ribbons here before I adhere my pocket closed. Now I am using this ribbon here. I think it came from Michael's or Walmart. It's very thin ribbon, and I've cut 2 pieces to about 13 inches. Now to place this correctly, I am going to close these because I want my ribbons to be down here on this pocket whenever they're tied closed. So I'm just going to measure. So this is 2 1/4 inches where I like the look of it. So then I'm going to come up here and measure 2 1/4 inches up from the edge on both sides. And then I will take my Fabric Fusion and apply adhesive here to both sides, placing the ends of a ribbon on each side at that mark. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of Fabric Fusion to the tops. And then I'll use my tacky glue for the sides. I'm just going to run, I know you can't see this, it's off camera, but I'm just going to run my adhesive down the edges or the sides of the pocket like I did in the last tutorial. I showed how I did this. And then I'm going to close this up and use my bone folder to burnish this closed, making sure that on the part with the ribbon, I'm going to adhere that down really well. Now, because my ribbon is in about 3/4 of an inch, it's actually going to make my pocket about 3/4 of an inch in as well. So the pocket's only going to be from here to here because I did add that fabric fusion to the top side. So it's going to make sure that that ribbon is adhered in there really well. But it does make my pocket a little bit smaller. Now I have my cupcake paper and I've cut this to 10 3/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to place it here to cover the front of my pocket. And then I'll come in later and probably add either a photo mat or some type of element that will go on this that'll be covered by the flap at the top. So I've actually have this piece sitting on my desktop, and it was the piece that we cut out for the frame earlier, and I think I'm going to use it here because I like the look of it. It's a good size for this, and I'm going to create another little pocket out of it. So I'm just going to adhere down the sides and across the bottom, and I'm going to put it here so that it is completely covered. I don't want it to be down here where you actually see the white. I'm going to put it, I don't want to put it in the center of the pocket. I'm going to put it down a little bit lower than center. And then I'm going to center it left to right. Now I'm just going to use my centering ruler here to help me. If you don't typically use a centering ruler, I would encourage you to look into one. I think they're phenomenal. I use my centering ruler for all of my projects. I actually have one. I had to look and see. I don't actually use a 12-inch ruler, just a regular ruler. I always use my centering ruler because I'm doing so much all the time that I have to find the center. So it just makes it so much easier. Okay, so I have my pocket here, and I will go ahead and add things to it later when we come back and add more things to the page. Okay, so for these flaps here, first I have these two pieces of the polka dot paper, and they're cut to 4 inches by 4 inches. It's going to go here on the center of each of my flaps. And then I've cut 4 pieces from this paper, and they measure 4 inches by a little tiny bit bigger than 1 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to take one of these and put it at the top. Then I'm going to have my polka dot paper for my photo mat, and then one at the bottom. So I'm going to do that here, and then I'm going to do that here on this flap as well. Here are my flaps decorated, and I'm going to come inside, and I'm actually going to do the same thing on the inside. So I've got my pieces that are 4 inches by 1 3/4. I'm going to place here and here. And then I've got my 4 by 4 square that I'm going to place here. And I've got the same thing for this flap. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere these down and then come into the center. Now for my center, I have 2 more 4 by 4 pieces for photo mats. And I'm going to place one down here in the bottom right corner, one up here in the top left corner. Then I have pieces of my cupcake paper that measure 2 3/4 by 4, and I'm going to place one here in this top right corner and one here in this bottom left corner, and create a little layout for my photos. I've taken my sticker here and backed it onto some black cardstock and fussy cut around it, and I'm going to be placing this here in the center. So I am going to make sure that my photos can slide behind it. So I'm only adhering this down to this yellow section here that's between these 4 pieces of paper. And then I'm going to set this right on here. And then press this down. So now the top and the bottom are open. That photo can slide underneath of it, but it gives it just a little bit of extra decoration for the page. And once that's on, we can go ahead and close these. And then I will bring my album, as I'm knocking things over, I will bring my album back in here and then tie this ribbon into a bow to close my page. Then I'm going to open this whole page up here, and I'm going to turn these in here, I think, so that it'll fit a little bit easier without falling off my desk. And we're going to start working on these flaps here. So to cover these papers, I'm going to be paying attention to this spread here, as well as this spread here. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do here, but I want to make sure that these start to come together and they don't start to look like they don't match. So I'm going to leave this one here as they come back to this one. And my idea was to take this striped paper so that it gives it a bit of a pattern, but it's not too busy, and it will match all of those pages, and it won't add that same pattern from any of those pages onto the fronts of here because I only have so many pattern pieces. Now I've cut these two pieces to 5 1/4 by 8 1/4, and I'm not going to adhere these down yet. I'm going to add my decorative elements first because I'm going to use a policy envelope closure with some brads, and I need to put those on before these pieces get adhered down. Now I've got 2 of my cut apart cards that I'm going to be using, and I'm going to be placing these in the centers of each flap. Then I've got this brad here that's got the balloons. Now I could put it on either side, but I like the look of it over here to offset these balloons. So I'm going to actually pierce that down through the dot and the exclamation point and have it come out to the side so it's slightly off the card. Then I have this brad here, just the heart brad, that I'm going to stick over top of the bow on the ties of these balloons, and I'm going to be placing the ribbon on here in a knot, and then it will loop around here. Now the first thing I've done is just adhered my cards down to the center of each of my pieces. I'm going to take my piercing tool, just pierce a hole down through my dot and my exclamation point and through the center of the little bow here. Then I'm going to open these prongs up on the brad, and then I'm going to place this down here and open these up to the back side and press it down. And same thing for this one. Then I'm going to take my ribbon. I'm just using that same little red ribbon that I have used on the previous flap. And now I'm just trying to get a little bit of room here to place this ribbon underneath. And then I am going to tie this in a knot and try to get that knot up underneath of there. There we go. So I've got it double knotted, and then I am going to clip that as close as I can. And then I'm going to get a little bit of space on this one so that the ribbon can come underneath of here. And you can either do it in a loop just like this, or you can crisscross them like this. And it will be easier when it's on the book, but right now I'm just checking to see how much ribbon I'm going to use. And then I'm going to have it come here. And then I'm just going to cut this off here. And you can have this wrap around as many times as you prefer, so there's no real right or wrong, it's just your personal preference. And I am going to take the end of my ribbon and just tie it into a knot. You can also put charms on here if you have charms, that looks cute too. And now I'm going to bring my album back in and place these on those flaps. So this is what my flaps look like with the pieces put on. I did adhere this down so that it doesn't move around, and this will wrap multiple times around here, but we'll do that later when we're finished with the inside. Now for the inside page, I'm going to be taking the remnant of this paper that we used, and I'm going to flip it over on the back side, and I'm going to be using this for my pockets here and here. And then I'm going to bring this paper in, and I'm going to be using this on the sides, and I'm going to be using this on the sides for the photos. So we've got that really super solid, and we've got another solid that coordinates with this one. And then for back here, this is where I'm going to bring my pattern paper in, and I'm going to be using this one. It's the back side of this paper. We didn't use it the last time we used this paper, so I'm introducing a new pattern, but the pattern is subtle enough that it's going to work well with these others as well. So this first piece is what I'm going to put down. It is 10 3/4 by 6 inches. Now I got the 6 inches from measuring from just slightly below the lowest point of my pocket up to my top. So if you made your pockets deeper, you want to measure down to the pocket and just leave a little bit of extra so that it will tuck down into that pocket, and that's how you'll get your measurement. I'm going to go ahead and adhere this down, then we're going to come back and adhere these pieces on. Once that piece is on, I'm going to take my back pocket, apply my adhesive to each of these side pieces here. And then I'm going to set this here, making sure that it's not too far down into the bottom score line, and then making sure it is inside the two side ones. And my piece just shifted, so I need to make sure that it's correct, and then burnish it down. Now I'm going to be starting with the front of the larger pocket. I've got a piece cut to 10 3/4 by 3 1/4. I'm going to sit this down here. And I'm going to match the edge of my paper up with the edge of my yellow paper here, and then it's actually matched up here and here on the sides, so I know where it goes. And then I'm going to draw this line here. Then I'm going to cut on this line, and then this piece should be the right size for the front pocket. And I'm going to make sure when I cut this, I'm going to cut this slightly below the actual line. So now that my piece is cut, I will go ahead and just set it on here on the front to make sure that it is the right angle. It is really hard to see with that other yellow paper there, so hopefully you can see that better. Now I'm going to adhere this piece to the front of my pocket. Now I'm going to take this piece that I have left, and I'm going to place it here first, and see, I'm just going to chop a little bit of this off. then it is the same angle as this piece, so I could do this on the back side. If I do it over here, if I line this up, if I line this edge up, and then cut this piece, I cut that from the back side, so now I will flip this over and this will be the right shape for here. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that down to the front of the pocket. Once this is on, I'm going to go ahead and take my adhesive here and I'm going to apply just a thin line down each side of that lower pocket and then close it to seal that pocket shut. Now I've taken the striped paper and I've cut a strip that measured 5 1/4 by 8 1/8. From that 8 1/8 piece, I cut one piece across the bottom that was 2 1/8, and it's going to go down here at the bottom. It's the part that has the yellow stripe on it. You might be using a different paper which doesn't have the yellow stripe, but the bottom piece is going to be 2 1/8. Then you're going to cut the middle section to 4 inches. I flipped mine over to the solid side. This is where the photo is going to be. And then the top piece is going to measure 2 inches, and then it's going to go here. And then each of these pieces is going to have that small yellow space between them. And then I cut a second piece and did the same exact thing, same exact measurement. So the bottom is 2 1/8. The middle flipped over to the B side, that's 4 inches for my photo, and the top piece is 2 inches up here. So I am going to make sure that all the pieces, since mine have stripes, I'm going to make sure that the pieces are all patterned in the same way. A piece isn't flipped over, this isn't at the top, and then I'm going to adhere all of these pieces down. Now I will come back later and add some type of stickers or some embellishments here since these are pretty plain overall, but I will do that once I bring my stuff in here and start adding my photo mats, because I may add a decoration here as well and I want everything to coordinate. So for now, this is all for the upper flap. I will go ahead here and use my ribbon to secure my page closed. Just wrapping it around my ties here like this. So that is my page, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up in here so you can see the progress we've made on the album. Now this is one thing that I don't particularly care for, is that this, unfortunately, it's kind of loose when it's tied, but it does hold everything closed. So that's the point of it, was to keep everything closed, but it does gap a little bit. But I think it's okay. And it was like that in my original album too. So that is all for this part of the tutorial. We have one more page. In the next one, we're going to do the bottom page, and then we'll do the page base, and we'll do the spines and wrap everything up for the basic build. And then after that, I will come back in and start adding my photo mats and additional embellishments. So I will hopefully see you in the next tutorial.